Mr. Zhulkarnain, Abdul Rahim.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome the amendments and support the bill. An electronic transaction system will allow for faster and more secure registration for donors' benefit. This will also reduce the possibility of errors. However, I would like to suggest several proposals to further safeguard the interests of all parties involved and at the same time to protect the reputation and integrity of the Office of Public Guardian and the lasting power of attorney system. I'm speaking from my own experience as a pro bono lawyer, helping laypersons make and file their LPAs. Firstly, on protection for donors. Currently, donors make an online declaration not equivalent to a statutory declaration before submitting information to third parties. I would like to ask whether it's necessary for donees to produce medical reports which certify that donors have lost their mental capacities first before they can exercise their powers under the LPAs. If the medical report is not mandatory, I would like to propose to make it a requirement for donees to inform OPG and produce medical reports which certify that the donors have lost their mental capacities before the donees exercise the powers under the LPAs. Bodies like the Association of Banks and Council for Estate Agencies already require donees to first produce medical reports which show that donor has lost his or her mental capacity. This is a requirement before he or she can exercise the powers under the LPA. Alternatively, the donee can be required to submit a statutory declaration to confirm that the donor has been certified by a doctor to lack mental capacity. Perhaps it's useful to have such a general requirement and to make it mandatory for banks and real estate firms who handle LPA-related transactions to keep OPG or their regulators informed once a request to exercise an LPA is made by a donee. Secondly, on protection for certificate issuers. I agree with MSF's retention of requirement for a donor to visit the LPA certificate issuer, or CI, in person, because this will ensure that the donor understands the scope and purpose of the LPA. However, I think it's equally important that the CI meets the donee as well. I would like to propose to make it a requirement for the CI to meet the donee to ascertain if the donee himself or herself is a person who has mental capacity to carry out the said powers on behalf of the donor. Furthermore, by having the CI to meet the donee, this will also help the CI to flag to OPG if the donee already is a donee on other LPAs. I agree and understand MSF's reasoning to protect confidentiality and only disclose the number of LPAs on which the donee has been appointed, and that the choice is ultimately up to the donor. However, the capability and adequacy of the donee in exercising such powers may be limited if he or she is to administer various matters on behalf of several donors who have lost their mental capacity at the same time. Surely, there's a limit to human abilities and dedication of time. It would thus be useful to consider a requirement for the CI to highlight to OPG when facing with donees who are multiple donees. OPG can then subsequently follow up and advise the donor that the chosen donee is a multiple donee, and the donor can make his or her informed choice. In this regard, perhaps it would be useful to consider a limit on the maximum number of LPAs on which someone can be appointed as a donee. Another aspect to look out for is the relationship between the donor and the donee, or the lack of one. having donors who are non-family members or who are no longer directly related by virtue of a divorce or remarriage may potentially or give rise to potential misunderstandings or conflicts in the future. In this regard, it will be useful to consider requiring CIs to meet potential donors in person too, and not just the donors. Not only can the CIs ascertain the mental capacity of the donors, but they can also raise the red flag to OPG if the donor is to be appointed is a non-family member or if there is anything amiss. It would also be useful if OPG is updated when there has been a change in the relationship between the donor and the donee. In this regard, may I ask if there is a database or system for OPG to be updated once the donee on an LPA ceases to be a family member by virtue of divorce or has predeceased the donor. In conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, notwithstanding the clarifications I made, I support this bill as it's a step in the right direction to greater access and protection for donors. Thank you.